I think everybody that's in here is a veteran, but just in case we have someone that is new or hasn't been here in a while, this is Elements of Comedy. And in this class, we talk about comedy writing and joke writing and gag writing and how that applies to some of the other work you're doing through animation, because Chuck Jones famously had a connection with clowns and comedy, and a lot of the comedy stuff that we talk about here, you can see all throughout Chuck Jones's work. So that's what we do here, is we'll talk a little bit about some of the elements of comedy. And this week, we are moving into a new month and a new theme for the month. And the focus this month, because it is Women's History Month, is that we're putting our focus on famous women comedians. And we have several that we're going to look at over the month, but today we're going to start with a comedian that some of you may know. In fact, I'll let you see if you can figure it out. This person was the voice of Dory in the Finding Nemo and Finding Dory movies. She is famous for dancing on a talk show that she hosts. That's right, Nathaniel, it is Ellen. Ellen DeGeneres is the comedian that we'll be talking about today to get us started. And a lot of people know Ellen from the things that I just said, from her talk show and from her appearances as Dory in those movies. And they know her, some people might know her from her television show from the 90s as well. She was on a sitcom in the 90s. But she got her start as a stand-up comedian. And she was actually the first female comedian on The Tonight Show to be called over to talk to the host of The Tonight Show. Back in the 80s and 90s, there was a talk show host called Johnny Carson. And it was during that time period, he was the king of the late night talk shows, and every comedian wanted to get a chance to be on that show to perform. And if you did really, really well after you finished performing, Johnny Carson would call you over and sit down on the couch and talk to you for a little bit. And Ellen was the first female comic for that to happen to. And so that's a kind of significant thing for her. But her performance that she did involved a bit of hers that was kind of a signature routine. And it's a phone call with God. And so I wanted to share with you that phone call performance, and we'll take a look at this, and then I'll talk a little bit about that afterwards. So I like that routine. I think it's kind of clever and interesting, and so it got me thinking about this idea of the one-sided phone call, where the comedian is performing a monologue, essentially, where we are having to imagine as the audience what's going on the other side of the line. And I think Ellen does that very well in that piece, and that piece became one of her signature stand-up routines for many, many years. And I think it has a very good use of rhythm, which is an element of comedy that we talked about before. We've talked about rhythm before. We've also talked about ear tickles before, where it's just kind of like, it just kind of sounds funny to your ear. And so I think that Ellen is a really good jumping off point for us. But this one-sided phone call routine had been around for a long time. In fact, I want to show you another one with another very popular comedian. And her name was Arlene Harris. And Arlene Harris was a very popular comedian in the 1940s and 50s on the radio. There was a radio program that she did, and she was known as the human chatterbox. And she would have, again, just like with Ellen, these one-sided conversations. And she would just chatter, and we would just hear her side of the conversation when we would have to imagine what the other person was saying. And that's where the joke came from. And in fact, someone said that her routines averaged about 4 words a second. That's how rapid fire they were. So I want to show you this one. This is from the TV show, The Dick Van Dyke Show, which I've shown Dick Van Dyke on here before. But this is Arlene when she's doing a guest appearance on the Dick Van Dyke Show and doing one of her phone calls. And so let's take a look at this. The person that you were asking about, Nathaniel, is Lucille Ball, and we're going to talk about Lucille Ball this month for sure, closer toward the end of the month. But here, let's take a look at Arlene Harris. All right, and so Arlene Harris is a comedian. You can, if you go on YouTube, there's tons of Arlene Harris on there if you want to check out more of her phone calls. So with Ellen, we get a phone call where the premise, the comic premise, is that you're a regular person talking to an extraordinary person or being on the other line, where there's another one-sided phone call monologue that's about someone talking to Abraham Lincoln at the Gettysburg Address. And then with Arlene Harris, you have a monologue that's two just regular people having a regular conversation, and it's just sprinkled in with jokes. And the last one that I want to play for you is a one-sided phone call where you have a regular person in an extraordinary situation. So in the first one, we have a regular person talking to an ordinary person. The second one, we have regular people talking about regular things. And then in this one, we have a regular person in an extraordinary situation. And this is a person who is probably the most famous for these one-sided phone calls. It's a comedian named Bob Newhart. Bob Newhart had a television show in the 70s. He had a different television show in the 80s. But he got his start as a stand-up comedian, and he was really famous for these one-sided phone calls. And this one is one of my favorites. I just think it's really silly and fun. But basically the idea is, whenever you start a new job, you have to go through a training day where you learn how to deal with any kind of like situation that might come up. And you go through that training so that once you get on the job, if something, unusual happens, then you'll know how to deal with it. And that can be anything from irate customers, or if a fire breaks out, or if an earthquake happens. You go to any new job, you start with this kind of training. And so this phone call is from someone who is starting their very first day on the job after having received that training at the Empire State Building on the night that King Kong climbs to the top of the Empire State Building. Do you all know King Kong? Do you know that movie? Yeah, so King Kong was a giant gorilla who was brought from the island that he grew up onto to Manhattan to be on display for a Broadway show, and he escapes from the Broadway show and he climbs to the top of the Empire State Building. And that's what the movie is about. And so this phone call is a sort of play on that, or a sort of satire of that, where this phone call deals with the person it was his first day on the job working for the Empire State Building, the day that King Kong took over the Empire State Building. So one last one that I want to share with you, and I think you'll like it. Like I said, this is one of my favorite versions of this. All right. So hopefully you enjoyed that. So here we have seen these three versions of this comedy trope of the one-sided phone call, basically a way to deliver a comedic monologue. And it puts the audience in the position of having to imagine the other side of the conversation, which is, it's very sort of, it makes this style of routine very audience interactive, because they sort of have to do a little bit of thinking as you're going along. And in the first one, as I said, we had Ellen is a regular person talking to an extraordinary person on the other line. In the Arlene Harris one, we see two regular people having a conversation about regular stuff that just happens to be funny. And then in this one, we have a regular person having a conversation with another regular person, but there's an extraordinary situation that's going on. So what I would like for you to do is to brainstorm your own premise for a one-sided phone call. If you were going to write a routine like this, so I want you to think about who would be the character making the call, who would be the person that they were calling to, and what is the call about. So it could be something like, we're seeing this character from King Kong that was an unseen character in the movie, but is a person that may have been an unseen part of the movie. So it can be a character from a movie like that. It can be a historical event from history. I saw a routine one time where someone was doing one of these, was a one-sided phone call, and they were talking the David and Goliath story. It was someone who was witnessing that happening and calling to tell someone about it. Like this little guy is trying to take on this giant. I know he's surprised when he actually does do it. So think about the premise that you want to go with, and come up with the character who's making the call, the character who is being called, and then what the situation is, whether it's an extraordinary situation or an ordinary situation. And so yeah, so take a couple of minutes and brainstorm that, and then hopefully we can get a couple of people to share theirs with us. If you want, you can, I know some people work better in drawings than they do with writing things down. So if you want to draw your two characters and say this character is talking to this character about that situation, you can make it a drawing if you would prefer to do that, or if that's the way that you work better. But really, I just want you to try this idea of coming up with a premise for a one-sided phone call. That's our comedic sketch that we're coming up with for today. And as I said, it's one that shows up a lot. We have Ellen, we have Arlene Harris, we have Bob Newhart. There's another comedian named Shelley Berman who would do a lot of these one-sided phone calls, a lot of times in sitcoms, not even just like someone who does it as a routine, but in sitcoms or movies, you might see a scene where this is happening, where we only hear the one side of the conversation. There's a play called Plaza Suite, where the play starts off with one of these one-sided conversations. So it's a very common trope. So that's why I thought it would be fun for us to try our hand at it today. And I have an idea for one that I wrote down a little earlier, and then after you guys come up with yours, we will hopefully get some of you to share. It's always more fun when you guys share your work than when we work on something that I came up with. So maybe if you share your idea for one, we can brainstorm and write some jokes for it. Or if nobody has an idea they want to share, then we'll work on the one that I have. But I'd much rather work on yours. So take a couple more minutes if you want to brainstorm. If you come up with one, try coming up with a second one. Again, this is not school. This is all just for fun. So there's no grades on how good they are. You can just throw out a bunch of ideas. And I forgot to say at the beginning, I talked to Scott about this, but we might finish up a little earlier than usual today, just to give you a heads up. So if it gets to be 10 after, a quarter after 6, and we start to wrap things up, we might finish up just a few minutes early. All right, has anyone come up with anything that they want to share? You can share by either raising your hand and talking to us. We'll spotlight your video, or if you don't want to do that, you can type it into the chat. And what's going on with Liliana and Heather Rose over there? Waving something at us. This is my pasta spoon. It's made to look like a dinosaur. Thank you. Thank you, Jay. All right, anybody have anything they want to share? I always appreciate it when you guys share things. Otherwise, it's just me talking to my computer for an hour. So, hi, Keen.
I'd like to share.
Nathaniel, you got something? Go for it.
So I only have 2 panels right now, so it's kind of about this person, and he's saying, "Hello, sir. Yes, there's a robot on the building. Yes, there is a robot on the building, and he kind of looks like a man, and he's pushing someone off the building. So it's just a RoboCop parody."
Excellent. Cool. I like that. That's good. Keen, yeah, sorry, Keen, you did miss the videos for today, but we're talking about writing comedy sketches in the style of a one-sided phone call, and so Nathaniel's there was about someone calling about a RoboCop style person on the building. Reading Scott's idea now. He says, phone call between sharks. They're discussing how misunderstood when they approach swimmers. They really just want to tickle their feet and return lost items from the bottom of the ocean. Very good, very good. I like it. Anyone else? Again, there's no penalty for throwing out an idea. Nobody's going to judge your idea. Everybody, it's just brainstorming. Very good. A call from someone experiencing Jurassic Park. That's a good one. Very good. Phone call between an undercover alien on Earth and one from their own planet. Oh, that's a good one. I like that. That could be a lot of fun. That reminds me of E.T. E.T. is always saying phone home, phone home, phone home. And so the premise could be, what if E.T. actually got to make that phone call? What would that be like? The Jurassic Park one is good too, especially if it was if the person calling from Jurassic Park was a very low status employee of Jurassic Park, because you have all the scientists and you have all of the high level people working at the park, but at the park they would also have to have people that empty the trash cans and stuff like that. And so if you have a character who isn't really in the know about what Jurassic Park is, they just have a job cleaning up the place. When things start to go wrong, that could be fun.
What about a phone call between a liquid and a solid? That could be interesting.
A phone call between a liquid and a solid. Oh, that could be interesting. Could
like water and ice. If water and ice could talk and have phone calls. But I mean,
that's fun. I like that you could if a part of it could be like one end of a river or something that starts out high in the mountain is calling down to the other part of the river saying they're going to be late, or the water from the bottom part of the river calling up to the mountain saying what's keeping you, why are you that's a good one. You could really play around with that one and come up with some fun stuff, I think. Let me read Tater's here. Vampire trying to explain to someone why Dracula isn't the best representation of their species. One murder in the entire species is and of course that's who everyone associates with. Look, there are many different kinds of blood. We don't need to drink every day. Like I said, it was one person way back in 1103. Very, very good. I like that one a lot. That's really fun. I wonder who Dracula would be, or not Dracula, but the non-Dracula vampire. I wonder who that person would be talking to that would make that fun. If it was someone, maybe it was just doing like an interview or something like that, or like a phone interview for a job, and that might be fun. There's a lot of comedic potential in that one, Tater. That's excellent. Another thing, speaking of speaking of the Jurassic Park one, it made me think of there's a this is not a phone call, but it is one performer playing two characters. I don't know. I'll have to watch it because I don't know if it has if it's more than PG language in it. So I'll have to. I would share it, but I don't know if it's shareable in this class. So I'll watch it again and see if it is, and if it is, I can share it next week. But there's a fantastic bit that this comedian Eddie Izzard has, and it's basically it's Darth Vader is going to the cafeteria on the Death Star, and is dealing with this person who's like the cashier at the Death Star, and because this person is just a low level cashier, they don't have any idea who Death Star or who Darth Vader is, and so they just keep hassling him where they're like, you're going to need a tray, and he's like, I'm Darth Vader, I don't need a tray, and she's like, no, everybody has to have a tray, but you don't understand, I'm Darth Vader. And this one part where he's like, you don't understand, I'm your boss. And the cashier goes, you're Mr. Stevens. It's a very funny routine. But like I said, that one might have some bad words in it, so I'll have to check that before I share that one with you. But I'll counterpoint, he's the right-hand man of Lord Sidious, people would know who he is. That's true. He is a pretty big deal, but I think that's part of the comedy of that bit is that someone wouldn't know who Darth Vader is, because he is a pretty even in that world, he's kind of a well-known figure. So the one I came up with, and we can brainstorm ideas about this one, or we can brainstorm some more ideas about yours. I was really enjoying talking back and forth about some of the ones that you guys were coming up with, but I came up with this one just because this is Chuck Jones Center for Creativity, and because he's one of my favorite characters. I thought, what if we did a phone call where Wile E. Coyote was on the phone with customer service at the Acme Corporation, trying to return one of those contraptions that messed up on him. I thought that would be a fun one to play around with. So if you have any ideas to help me brainstorm that one, you can share those in the chat, or you can turn on your microphone, and if you have any funny gag or bit that might work for that routine. You have all the things that happen when you're on a sorry, I'm looking at Scott's thing. Conference call between baseball players from the Abbott Costello routine. That's funny. That would get very confusing for sure. But I thought with the Wile E. Coyote one, that there's all kinds of things that can be annoying about dealing with a customer service phone call, that it might be fun to put Wile E. Coyote in that situation, about being on hold for a long time, getting transferred. Oh, you need this department, and getting if he starts off on the call where he says, I want to do a return, and then the person says, oh, if you want to return that's from the such and such department, and you just get kind of bounced around when you're on those phone calls. Someone who's new, so there's just lots of stuff that you could play around with there. Keen, you wanted to share something?
Okay, this is a phone call between an ant and the ant weather department. So the ant's kind of angry because the weatherman said that there would be clear weather all day, and right now he's just directly crushed by a falling foot. yeah, the weatherman is basically the biggest, you know.
Cool. Well, that's interesting. That's really creative. That's something that I never would have thought of. But yeah, that's really fun. I like that idea a lot of an ant talking to the weatherman because he can't get his work done because the weatherman was not good. That's really fun. I bet you could come up with a lot of really good back and forth for that one. Let's see. I have some people in the chat saying some things. Yep, that's a good gag, Liliana and Heather Rose. I don't know what that is, Nathaniel.
I got the answer.
You have an answer?
Saying what the heck?
Oh yeah. It's like those the word jumbles in the newspaper every day. Do people get the newspaper? Am I the only person that still has a newspaper? Okay, well, thanks to all of you who brainstormed and played some ideas out with the phone call thing. Those are some fun ones. But yeah, like I said, this one-sided phone call bit is, I think it's just it's a fun routine because it's a classic comedy routine that's been around for years and years and years, and lots of people have done different things with it that are a lot of fun. So I thought it would be fun for us to play around with that as our comedy sketch that we work on together for today, and it gets us kicked off into our well-known Women of Comedy month, starting us off with Ellen DeGeneres and her phone call to God. So yeah, so that's all I have for today. That was really, and like I said, we're finishing a little bit early, but yeah, that's all I wanted to work on today. I don't want to belabor it too much, but yep, thanks, Kat. I was going to mention that before we go. As always, I have to mention the donation page because that's how we keep these classes going. Not just this class, but all of the free classes at the Chuck Jones Center for Creativity. The way that we're able to keep offering those to people is by the donations that help support it. So if you haven't donated yet, please do so. If you have and you want to see if your parents can donate a little more, we would appreciate that. Because as I said, it's the one, donations is the one single way that we are able to keep these classes free for everybody. So yeah, that's my spiel about that. If you want to, I don't know if Scott or someone asked if we're able to keep the chat open for the remaining couple of minutes, or keep the Zoom on for the remaining couple of minutes, even though we finished class. Is that okay with you?
That's fine with me. We can go for another 10 minutes.
Okay, cool. Well, you guys.
I need to leave at 3:30, so it's about 10 minutes.
Okay, about 10 minutes. Okay. Yeah, that's when we normally wrap up anyhow. So we're only finishing a few minutes early, but I'm gonna hop off of the Zoom call. But if you want to keep brainstorming some of these ideas for your phone calls, you can do that. If you want to do some drawings, you can do that. But thanks for playing around with the phone calls today, especially those of you who participated and threw out ideas. Those were a lot of fun to play with. Again, like I said, it's always more fun when you guys share ideas. I know sometimes you get shy, but this class, even more so than some of the drawing classes, it's important that we keep it interactive because, like I said, it's always more fun when we're dealing with your ideas and not just it's not just an hour of me talking to my computer, right? So So I know sometimes you get a little shy or you get a little hesitant to want to throw out an idea, but like I said, there's no judgment when we're goofing around here. So please continue to be an active participant in this class, because that makes it a lot more fun for everybody. All right, excellent. Well, next week we're going to be doing some working on some comic characters. That's going to be fun. We're going to talk about a comedian named Whoopi Goldberg. Some of you might know from some of her projects. Yeah, that's what's on for next week. Thank you very much for joining me today. Thanks for your participation, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, Mike.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.